Good day, my loves. Welcome to day number 30. Thank you so much for allowing us to take you on this journey of 40 days of devotion. Our time is almost up. I can't believe how fast 40 days has gone by. Today, the name of our devotion is called God Is. That one phrase in and of itself encompasses so many things. So bow your heads with me, Lord. Thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for this time that you have given us. God, thank you most of all for these days of devotion, time with you. God, there have been so many struggles during these 40 days, everything from technology to just personal life. But I thank you for calling us aside to meditate, to be devoted, and to understand more about you, to strengthen us, to guide us, to support us, to fortify us. Now, God, be with us and give us understanding. In Jesus' name, amen. And so again, our verse comes from 2 Corinthians 4, verses 7 through 18. And I'm going to read just a little bit of it to you. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed. Perplexed, but not driven to despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. For while we live, we are always being given up to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be made visible in our mortal flesh. It's not easy being a Christian. Let's just start right there. It's not easy being a Christian. It's not easy putting your hope and your trust and your faith and belief in God who works in his time and not yours. It's not easy being a Christian. 2005, 17 years ago, was a rough year for my family. My very favorite aunt, who at one time or another has been a little bit of everything to me and Taylor, was diagnosed with cancer. For several years, we watched as the cancer ravaged her body. And our only goal during that time was to rally around her, to support her in any way that she deemed she needed support. And then for me, I felt an added burden. I felt like because we had shared so much laughter during the course of our life, things from the way that I act to the way that she acts to things that we found funny about just life in common. And so my burden was even more so because I felt like I owed it to her to bring the gift of laughter any and every time that I can, because we know laughter is good for the soul. Many days she was just so very weak. Not only was she doing chemotherapy, but she at one point or another was also doing radiation. And we could definitely see the signs of change. You know, her spirit was the same. She was still the kind, loving, compassionate person that she'd always been. But her outward body had changed. We could see where the radiation had caused discoloration in parts of her skin, in her nails. We could see where the chemotherapy had really just done exactly what it was supposed to do. And we could see where she lost weight. And we could physically and tangibly touch. Everything was tangible. Every change was tangible. But I'll tell you something so interesting. Even in all the changes that we saw in her, what was more obvious than anything else was the miraculous power of Jesus through this trial. Even though we saw her body change, we saw her suffering, we would see her at moments, cry because of pain or frustration or lack of control in the situation. More than anything, we saw the power of Jesus in every aspect of this experience. We saw the power of God through the hands of a surgeon. We saw the power of God in the hands of the army who put my uncle one place and then all of a sudden called them on the telephone and said, no, it's early, but we're going to move you someplace else. And my uncle was a little leery about moving at that particular time because they had found what they believed was a good cancer treatment for my aunt, only to discover that when my aunt prompted him to accept the new position, that he was being sent to the best place in the United States for her. And it was that move that God orchestrated that actually saved her life. It was even more miraculous to watch people watch her journey, because lives were changed, people were touched. Some of you went on that journey with us. We started a prayer ministry where we would come together once a week via telephone, Zoom, whatever it was. I don't even remember what was happening back in 2005. But many of you walked that journey with us, and we saw just the love of God throughout that whole entire experience. It was difficult not to lose faith. It was difficult not to lose heart. But through the power of God, through his reminders, through his grace, through his compassion, 17 years later, what God counted for us as a test and a trial, ultimately a testimony, what man counted as ultimate and absolute loss, God saw fit to grant my aunt the grace and to extend her life. And 17 years later, she is still alive. She is well. She does not have any semblances of cancer. She and my uncle have, started a farm, and they've started other businesses, and she is just living her life to its full potential and giving back to God in ways that I suppose they had private conversations about during her trial and tribulation. And I often look at her because I am so moved by how kind she is, how compassionate she is, how very patient she is, how even in the midst of her own health challenges, she was always concerned about everybody else, how we were doing, how we were dealing. And then I'm really just touched by the fact that God saw fit to walk with us through that entire experience. My aunt means the world to me. And I'll never forget the Saturday that she told me and Taylor she had been diagnosed with cancer. I just remember feeling like I had lost my breath. And I vowed, along with Taylor, who was very, very young at the time, we vowed that we would get up every morning at 5 o'clock and that we would pray for her. And if you know anything about my daughter and even me, sometimes we're not good at being early morning people, but we kept that commitment until God healed her. And so we know the power of prayer. The beauty of this passage that we've been given today is that it allows Jesus to be bigger and more visible than any problem or any situation that we face. Our broken lives, our broken situations. The broken pieces are sharp. They are unstable. They have the ability to cause even more pain if we mishandle the pieces that are broken. If we pick up the shards of our life and don't allow the master to craft them in his way that puts them back together in a semblance or shape or form of some sort that we can use, they have the potential to break us and to cut us again. But our job is to remember that through him we have life, we have the gift of salvation, we have access to exactly who and what and all that Jesus is. You know, it's funny, our brokenness may actually, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking to myself as I make this next statement, our brokenness may be a source of embarrassment to us. But what we have to always remember is that Jesus can take every single broken piece and uniquely restore it to something that captivates the attention of somebody else and speaks to a piece and a part of their life, that speaks to a piece and a part of our life. One situation has the potential to speak to hundreds of people in hundreds of different ways that become personal to them and their situation. And that's the power of God. That's the power that we cannot deny. That's the power that we cannot forget. That's the power that we cannot forget to access when we are going through our trials and our tribulations. God has so much for us. He has so much in store for us. And let me tell y'all something. I'm sitting here and I'm looking over my notes and I'm talking to you, but I'm talking to God as I'm talking to you, because these 40 days have been about obedience for me, even in the midst of challenges. And as I'm talking to you, God is reminding me, this is why I told you to make these videos, not necessarily for anybody else first, but for yourself first, because sometimes you need to hear out loud what God is, what He will be, what He has been, and what He forever will continue to be in and through your life. We have to remember that what we are going through is a testimony. It's a test first, but it's a testimony that will speak way beyond the end of the situation, that will continue to speak long after our situations have changed, improved, dissipated, disappeared, whatever the case may be in your life. But it is the testimony that remains, that continues to speak to the power of who and what God is, as long as we let Him be. God is. That is a complete sentence in and of itself. God is my peace. God is my joy. God is my all. God is my source. God is my resource. There are so many ways in which God is. And the beauty about being His child is that we get to access every single one of them. And so my challenge for you today is to figure out how to access God in your life for what you need in your life. And your needs are not about you being selfish or just causing, just wanting God to only focus on you. But sometimes He allows us to go through things and to process situations so that we are reminded that in all things that we need Him. So that we are reminded that in all things, when we need Him, He will show up. And so that our lives become a living testimony, so that others through our trials and tribulations can be reminded that God is. Don't you ever forget that God is. God is the joy and the strength of your life. He can move all things. He can remove misery, strife, but His promise is that He'll keep you. He'll never leave you. And His biggest promise of all is that He will never, ever, ever come short of His word. You may be going through something right now that seems like it will never be over, but God is. You may feel like there is no answer for the problems that you face. God will. You may feel like there is no way out, but God can. Allow Him to be the God of is in your life today. I love you. I love you so much. Be blessed. Just know that God is. That's the blessing for you today. God is. Bye-bye.